first question is, why is there not equal representation of laypersons on the connectional boards, including the Episcopal Committee?
Madam Editor, let me begin by thanking you and the Star of Zion for hosting this format. And I want to thank the Christian Education Department in Truthville for allocating this time for us to share some thoughts that we might have. I also want to thank my colleagues for not only their willingness, but their enthusiasm about having opportunities to share with our membership. To address the question specifically, let me say that the 2012 General Conference gave us an opportunity to revisit the way in which our administrative boards are appointed. And the Board of Bishops spent a great deal of time in making efforts to move towards increased lay representation. We have now the highest level of lay participation on administrative boards than we have in the history of the a.m.e. Zion Church. We are not there yet, but we're moving in that direction. We are making a sincere effort of getting greater lay participation while at the same time trying to appreciate the skill sets that make up the various administrative boards. But we are moving in that direction. With regard to the Episcopal Committee, this is a really important principle for us. In the a.m.e. Zion Church, we recognize the important role of laity and clergy, and they are not the same. It does not mean one is better than the other. It does not mean that one is more powerful than the other, but it does mean that they are distinct roles. No one becomes a minister in the a.m.e. Zion Church without the laity being involved in that process, from the class leader through the quarterly conference. Ministers have to be voted upon by the laity in order to become a minister. But there is a role, once that happens, of sending forth ministers that we believe is the role of clergy. So in the annual conference, it is a bishop that sends forth pastors. And at the general church level, it is the Episcopal Committee that sends forth bishops. It is our practice that clergy send forth clergy at the annual conference level and at the general church level.
Are there any responses to the answer from Bishop Moore? The answer satisfied your query? Okay, moving on to number 2. What plan does the Board of Bishops have to empower local churches to begin impactful ministries in their respective communities? Okay. What plan does the Board of Bishops have to empower local churches to begin impactful ministries in their respective communities?
I think this is an excellent question, because churches are planted in communities to make a difference in those communities. And one of the things that causes churches to die or decline is when they are turned inward, when all of their resources and all of their focus is on themselves. However, in order for a church to make a difference in a community, the members of that church must first be led to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And then they must be intentionally discipled, because by nature we are selfish. I think self-preservation is the first law of nature. And so it takes spiritual maturity to take us from concern about ourselves to concern about others. And through small group discipleship, God transforms the leadership of the church and the membership of the church in such a way that we change our focus from inward to outward. And what happens is the mindset of the church moves towards ministry, moves towards outreach. And so I think programs are all right, but disciple making does the job in such a way that the thrust of the church changes and God begins to birth dynamic ministries that reach people in the community.
Are there any responses? This is a dialogue. Okay, moving on to number 3. Since bishops are ministers, why is it not required for them to have their character examined and passed before cleared to serve another quadrennium?
Bishop Starnes said, that's a good question. Pastors, ministers stand annually at the conference to have their characters passed. In essence, bishops do so every 4 years at the General Conference. The Episcopal Committee, a gathering of elders, oftentimes make decisions about the placement of bishops, the non-placement of bishops, based on the evaluations that come from the conferences that they presided over, or for various activities that may have occurred during the course of a quadrennium when assignments are made. But for the bishop, it is the General Conference every 4 years that they must stand before, and to see whether or not a character will be passed. It is not given in the same language that it is on the annual conference level, but in essence, that is what happens when we come to a General Conference. And just as a pastor comes not knowing what his fate will be or what her fate will be when they come up to the annual conference, the same thing honestly is true for a bishop.